So, I think ever since the creator of DOA has passed away, or at least it's been announced that he had passed away a few days ago, the internet has kind of gone a little wild with that information. Essentially, you have two types of people. One type of people that basically is now glazing DOA and now understanding why it was so good and stuff like that, which, you know, people are now calling them out on it. It was like, you know, DOA was always good, you just didn't want to accept it because of the Gooner status it had hold, and that's honestly very much true. Then at the very same time, you get the type of people that is looking to blame people for DOA's downfall, essentially, and really trying to find any shape and form of trying to, you know, hoe whatever person that they can. Essentially, from what I've been able to see, or at least what has hit my timeline of things, is that people are trying to blame Maximilian Dude for like a lot of the stuff of how, you know, DOA kind of ended up being, like trying to be like this actual fighting game, like a lot of other games, trying to be like, you know, I guess like for the normie sort of audience, for the people that just want to actually jump into a fighting game and obviously be like the normal type of person and all that sort of stuff, putting it in front of their eyes and making a game of what DOA 6 ended up being and stuff like that, and basically just trying to put whatever blame there is on him, which I'm not gonna sit here and lie. I do understand the feeling of just being like, yeah, somebody needs to take the fault for this, and definitely this is nonsense, and it is. However, it ain't Max's fault that the game ended up being the way it is, right? Let's just keep very much say. To be honest, it's not even one single person's fault if we're going to go down that whole rabbit hole when it comes down to it. There's a lot of factors throughout the many years that has existed where, you know, just fiction in general has been challenged by so many different people because of lewd concepts and things of sort like that. It's beyond FGC. It's going so far into every realm of fiction, and that is exactly why we're dealing with the battle of censorship as it is now, because of the different ideals that people have about what fiction is and what should be allowed, what can be done, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and stuff like that, right? Let's keep it very much a stack. It ain't Max's fault. He's only one damn dude, right? He's only one damn person when it comes down to it. I highly doubt he can cause chaos to absolutely just straight up bombard every fighting game ever and just straight up be the one person to do so. I don't believe that for a second when it comes down to it. Now granted, I'm not trying to be like an ultra Max glazer. I do like Max, but when it comes down to it though, there's been takes I don't necessarily like or really care for that he has in the past before, but majority of the time he's been fine. So I'm not gonna necessarily, you know, try to be on the bandwagon and be like, yeah, let's hate on Max now, because no, that's just never how it's really been. Because this isn't, again, just a one person issue. This is an entire fictional issue with how people perceive fiction to be and stuff like that. The reason why DOA got hoed is because of the mentality that many people has had for years about what's acceptable in fictional content and stuff like that of the sort. That's why you're now seeing people kind of glaze up DOA, and it's really shitty. And I do agree with a lot of people's take on this, that it had to take literally the man's death for it to happen, for people to come through now realizing how good DOA actually is. Granted, is it nice that it's finally getting some attention that maybe will drum up some interest to maybe see if a DOA 7 is possible? But still, realistically, it should not have took a tragedy or a death or whatever to basically make you realize something is actually really good when people have been saying that shit for years, right? And that's just ultimately how it is. But when it comes down to it though, if we can't necessarily blame it on one person like a lot of people want to do, then what do we actually blame it on? We have to blame it on society and just how people kind of are, right? Let's just keep it very much a stack, and this is going to be treading for some old ground for people that may have not seen this channel before or seen any of the previous videos I've done, but there is a weird ass stigma when it comes down to anything that is sexual in nature and how it's applied to anything of media that we end up seeing. Essentially, it feels like these days, it's like people are just genuinely scared of anything sexual, right? They're scared to express themselves in any way that is like normal sexuality and stuff like that, or just anything sexy in general. It comes down to a fine ass woman, a fine ass dude, and all that sort of stuff. The only times it is acceptable or it is not necessarily looked down upon is when it's the infinite amounts of glaze of anything that is gay. If you could do like 10 million gay jokes, and I promise you, people will necessarily just be on your side all the damn time. The moment you add a straight concept into it, into whatever you're talking about, literally people start getting up and mad, getting up in arms, and all that sort of stuff, and that's just ultimately how it is. We try to be in this progressive sort of mindset only for people to be very selective when it comes down to their mindset and stuff like that. So that's just ultimately how it is, right? There's also the factor that there is people that genuinely care for things that is, you know, more mature and having a more mature mindset instead of looking at things from a more, it's kind of hard to explain. Kind of like more of a feminine mindset or like a cute mindset. That's why I was talking about the whole, you know, ideal of like maturity versus cuteness when it comes down to a female character, and why I lean more into the cuteness side of things. Because let's just keep it very much a stack. 9 times out of 10, when it comes down to the FGC, for a lot of damn people, they will lean towards mature looking characters than they will ever really do the cute characters, right? That is just how it is. That's been a known thing. I remember when DNF Duel was a hyped ass thing and people were caring about that. No one was excited for the damn puppeteer lolly character. No one was excited for that character whatsoever, right? I didn't see not a damn person was excited for that type of character. And that's essentially what you get when it comes down to it. There has been many different times in the FGC space where many content creators have expressed themselves to be like, yeah, I don't really give two shits about lolly and things like that when it comes down to these sort of short characters and things like that. That's why you see people just not necessarily give too much of a damn about it. That's why you have people like Show You Momo and Sonic Fox and plenty of these other people to come through, basically denounce that type of thing, even though, again, it's been a part of things like anime and things like that for a long time, and you know damn well that's not going to stop a lot of these creators of these games to put those type of characters in. It is what it is. You're just going to have to deal with it, and it's just whatever, right? If Final Fantasy were to come out with a damn fighting game, a real fighting game today, you know who's going to get put into that game that you're not going to like? Shantato. Shantato is short as shit and she rhymes. And also at the same time, she's a cute character. I'll be for it, but ultimately a lot of other people is not going to be for it. Not many people are going to play that character, right? If you basically play any of those characters within the FGC space, from what I feel like is going to happen is basically you're going to get denounced really in the space. And hell, I think that has technically happened before with some person that was playing in a tournament, and then they get basically banned from a tournament or like disqualified or whatever the hell, basically because they like a lolly character. And it's very strange. That space is very much strange. And I get why there's a giant stigma outside of that space as well, because again, there is a lot of crazy concepts that get thrown into these games, and then a lolly character is what draws the line for a lot of people. It's very strange, and it's like very weird. Basically, what I'm trying to get at with a lot of this stuff is that the lack of open-mindedness when it comes down to what can be done in fiction is very much a giant hindrance on not just the FGC space, but just when it comes down to people and what they see in fiction entirely, right? Because let's just keep it very much a stack. There has been plenty of issues of different games that is beyond the game just being ass or your input delay or the rollback netcode or things like that. There has been major issues that has been affecting a lot of these games in very different political ways, or very much shaping up different characters to be certain things that no one really care for and stuff like that, right? Like, do we need to talk about the Guilty Gear Strive situation with Bridget? Like, I'm so glad people are stopped talking about that shit now, because that shit was annoying, because it shouldn't have been a thing in the first damn place. There was no reason to change the character's lore to do what they did when it comes down to it, and ultimately they just said F it, they did it anyway, right? Whether it was some type of activist group or whatever, whether it was some people that were just from the West that entered Arc System Works to hoe it, whatever the case may be, they very much screwed themselves in the foot when it came down to Guilty Gear, and that's why the game is kind of in this position where it is, where they're kind of like, you know what, if you don't support Strive in this 2.0 section of the game, then the game basically kind of dies. And it's like, well, who the hell's fault is that? Literally, who the hell's fault is that? You could have easily made Guilty Gear Strive a greater game if you put back the overkills in the game, if you didn't do what you did to Bridget in the game and try to cater to that audience that don't even play these sort of games to a high extent. There's people that play those games that are transgender and stuff like that, and that's fine. I'm not tripping about that, but it is like a small part of the audience that do, right? It is a small part of the audience that do. And to keep it very much a stack, no one asked for that sort of thing to kind of happen. So if Guilty Gear Strive doesn't do well and if it gets put on the shelf for years, then that's kind of on Strive's fault themselves. It's kind of on Arc System Works' whole fault themselves when it comes down to it. My point is that people have a tendency, at least developers do, when it comes down to these games, add in stuff to these games that nobody gives a shit about, that really shouldn't even be a thing to be touched in the first damn place. Bridget's character from back in the day was fine. The hell did you need to switch it up for? You didn't need to switch it up. You could just let it go, be what it actually is. But people wanted to say that that character is, trans and is like that and stuff like that. People have been doing that shit for effing years. Not just within FGC, but just within anime itself. Calling people like Tanya Von de Gurachav from Saga of Tanya the Evil trans because it was a reincarnated guy into a 14-year-old girl's body. And it's just like, that's not how that works. That is really not how that works. And they did this with so many different characters that is out there. And it's like, that is not how that works in the slightest. So it's just very weird. It's a very strange situation. And that was like at the pinnacle of these past couple of years where this type of thing was prevalent, right? And it's still prevalent now, but I feel like it died out a lot more with recent current political things that kind of has happened, right? So it's not nearly as crazy as it has gotten to that pinnacle point, but it's still pretty much out there, and it's not necessarily a great time. There is just so many different factors that affects different games and different media entirely, to the point where you can't just look at one person or one thing and say that's the catalyst, that's the reason why we don't get shit nowadays. No, it's basically the entirety of society and how different people in power wants to kind of change up how people think and how they kind of go about certain things. To be honest, right now, we should be living in a whole ass era where, yes, a DOA 7 has already been a thing for its niche audience, and that's just how it is. There should already be a new Senran Kagura game when it comes down to it. There should be another X-Lude sort of game that's out there, whether it's fighting game, whether it's just some regular anime game, doesn't matter, right? You want to know the reason why people even like glaze up when there is a hot ass female character? It's because people have been starved for that shit for years. People have been legitimately starved, been told that it's wrong to like a fine ass woman, and basically went out their way to be like, no, women must look realistic, must look ugly as shit for some reason, when even the women themselves, no matter the space, basically don't want that shit either, right? That's just how it is. When people were seeing like Mortal Kombat 1, for example, people want MK to go back to MK9 designs and stuff like that for so long because they have been effing starved. They've been starved of what a good female character can actually look like, right? If you're gonna add a gory element to the game and do all this crazy stuff, is it really so crazy that you also want to sell it off of, fine ass female characters with nice sex appeal and stuff like that? It's not that wild to really think about. And then when you get games like Stellar Blade to come out, people glaze the hell out of that game. You want to know why people glaze the hell out of that game? Because for the first time in what feels like a long ass time that isn't from a Western studio, yes, you can have a pretty female character look mad good and do cool things. Holy shit, who knew? And that's just how it is, right? People are so burnt out of not having a fine female character to look at, that when Eve came out, when it came down to Stellar Blade, people were rejoicing. They were like, alright, this is the turning point. This is our turning point. This is our moment. We don't have to deal with this bullshit no more. And I was very much happy as well. You know, that's just how it was. People were so damn starved. They didn't even care if the game was good. They were just happy as hell that we finally get to see someone look actually good. That is just how it is. And you even see this sort of vibe and feel with a lot of these other Japanese devs that is out there. Tetsuya Nomura in an interview had said, like, I won't say last year or not, like maybe this year or whatever. He basically said himself that, yo, real talk, I like to make my characters look good. I don't really like the idea of making ugly characters, because why would you do that? He even went out as far as to say that. Then you have people, when it comes down to Dragon Quest, the person that made Dragon Quest basically go out their way to be like, you know what? We have, like, you know, these female and male options. They switch it to Type 1, Type 2. Who's asking for these sort of changes? And things like that. Like, it's the Japanese devs themselves understand that there is some bullshit going on and they don't like it, right? So it's kind of crazy how the West will just regularly eat this all damn day, every damn day, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And then it's even worse when you have really big content creators see this shit happen, see this stuff go down, and then not a single one of them, unless there's someone like Osmongold, go out their way to maybe sort of mention it if it catches their attention. That is the crazy thing. That is basically the crazy ass thing. I get why they don't do it, because they don't want to get canceled, they don't want to lose any type of sponsorship or whatever, and I absolutely get that, right? Like, if I got the ability to get a lot of money and was able to be rich for once in my damn life, or at least live decently, you think I want to go back to being broke? Hell no. But when it comes down to it though, it's also about doing, you know, the right thing, calling the right thing out, right? And that's just ultimately how it is. I'm pretty certain most people that has hit that higher end level of content creation to make that as much money as they do, I promise you they're not going to go back to that position of trying to be broke again. I know they're not going to. But when it comes down to it though, it'll be refreshing, nice, and really good that if somebody that wasn't a smaller content creator like myself or whoever else is out there essentially would say a lot of this stuff that we've been saying for literal years now. It will be nice and refreshing to see, to be like, okay, so we're not going crazy, right? Because there's just no way. Dead or Alive is a fantastic fighting game. It may not be the best one, it may not be, you know, the top thing that people always talk about all the dang time, but it is a good fighting game. And honestly, Itagaki made this masterpiece and did it very damn well, saying, you know, essentially that this game, that if you want to really sell a game for any price, or you want to sell a good game and people, as long as people will buy it, you have sex in it, or at least some sexy details in it, you have violence, you have the ability to kind of make a gamble and it will work out in some ways, and it's just like, yeah, honestly, that's kind of what people want. That's basically what people have been starved of for a long period of time. The reason why so many people have gone to Eastern, you know, countries for games now is just because of that very same fact. People want to go ahead and, you know, see actual good violence while also getting good characters as well, right? It's not just one separate thing. They want both. They want both damn things. That's why you got something like Wukong that did absolutely well. That's why you get to see something like Stellar Blade do well. That's why you get endless amounts of gacha games, whether it's Genshin, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves, Duet Night Abyss, you know, Silver Palace, or like even an answer that's gonna come through, Neverness to Everness. People are excited for these games because holy shit, they actually make characters look good. They actually have a story that people care about and gameplay that doesn't feel like absolute dog water all the time. That's amazing. Yeah, they might be gacha, some of them at least, and when it comes down to it, it might not necessarily be the best thing ever when it comes down to how it's being implemented and whatever, but still, it's better than the alternative of being starved to death by not having a damn thing. It is what it is. You might not like it, but that's just how it is though, right? It just is. When you have nothing but mature content, quote unquote mature content that the West develops all the time, you need to balance that out with the cuteness, with the characters that obviously are lollies, that people on this side for the most of the time don't really have a problem with characters being sexy and looking fine as well when it comes down to it, right? It's not just so completely black and white, like, oh, if you like DOA, you're basically some type of gooner, you're some type of weirdo, or something like that. It's not necessarily that simple. I like DOA because it's hot women beating ass. What is there not to like about that concept? It is what it is. If it was just hot women doing hot things, then I would play the volleyball extreme games, which, to keep it very much a stack, I don't really like that much. I think it's fun when you play it for like the first time, but outside of that, it's not really all that fun to me. I don't really care. If I'm going to be honest, if I really wanted to see some crazy nonsense, I would just mod Ayane in Koikatsu. High key, I would just do that instead of trying to play a game where it's just a bunch of teasing and doesn't really go anywhere. If I'm gonna really want to see them do something, I would rather play DOA where they actually throw hands and look good while doing so. That is literally how it is for me, how it is for a lot of people, how we all kind of feel, right? DOA was already a good masterpiece of a game. It's only now people are starting to come through and be like, oh, this game is actually kind of good. I ain't gonna sit here and lie. Yes, we've been telling you this shit for years, right? We've been telling you this shit for a good ass time. Like Senran Kagura. People still love Senran Kagura. People still give two shits about Senran Kagura. People still care. That's why they're still having to finally getting a damn project, despite it being the mobile game, but they're finally getting a project about something, and people are actually pretty damn happy that the franchise is still showing life, right? Japanese only game, but still it's showing life, and that's good. That's very damn good. So ultimately, when it comes down to it, the fall of things like DOA, like Senran Kagura, like games like those, is not just blamed on one single person entirely, right? You can't just blame on one single person. It is basically what society has led itself to be, where you can't accept anything that is lewd and raunchy in nature. You have to accept things that are boring, things that are repetitive, things that are mature for the mature quote-unquote audience and stuff like that. People often said that, you have to throw away the cute side of things and actually go for the mature side of things, and stuff like that too. It's just like, that's not how that works. That's just not how that works, right? Ultimately, you can have both things and they can both work out fine. It just comes down to whether or not people are going to be willing to accept it, right? And that's exactly why we're in this censorship hellhole as it is, with age verification left and right, digital ID left and right, and really all this shit kind of started because people didn't want to at least realize that freedom of expression is valid for everything when it comes down to it. And that's why lollies got attacked the first damn time by these different activist groups, by MasterCard and Visa, by all these other people. And essentially that's how they got in the first damn place, to hoe everything, at least as of this year. This has been going on for a long time now, but this is where it really started to hit hard when it comes down to it, because it's not going to just censor one thing, it's going to go after everything. You don't like lollies? Alright, that's perfectly fine. We'll go ahead and go for furries next. Then we're going to go for every other thing. The GTA 6? No GTA 6. That should be banned. It's violence against women and all this other stuff. And then you really add this up, it gets really ridiculous to a point. How would you think you would feel if you're someone in the FGC, if you're someone watching this video right now, that if someone come through like a collective shout or whatever, basically said, alright, all fighting games are now banned, we're going to do something about these fighting games because you're beating up women and that's wrong. Do you think you're gonna sit there and take that? Do you think for 5 seconds that you will be happy with that and be like, oh yeah, that's nothing, that's whatever? Do you think big content creators that do things with fighting games constantly all the time, do you think for 5 seconds that they'll actually stay silent for once? Do you think they're gonna stay silent like that? No, they're gonna actually say something and actually find out how ridiculous this really is, and then we're all gonna be sitting back eating popcorn like we did with the furries when we tried to tell you, like, hey, Lolicon needs to kind of stay there, because if you get rid of this shit, other things is gonna follow when it comes down to getting censored. They didn't listen, and then they shit got attacked as well. And now we're basically gonna be doing the same exact thing if this were to affect the FGC, everybody eating popcorn together, as we see the FGC kind of burn to a damn crisp even more than it already is. That is just how it is. People need to just chill, need to realize that, people like different things, that they are for different things, and it is what it is. It is fictional content. All of it is fictional content at the end of the day, right? That is just what it is. That's just how it is. And if people want to get into that, or a dev want to create something for it, then it is what it is. Let them create what they want to create. That's all you really need to do. That is literally all you need to do. Just let people like what they want to like, and don't necessarily be so judgy about it and stuff like that. That's really the whole damn point. You want DOA to come back, or DOA to exist again, or games like DOA to come through and exist. You gotta let people actually like what they're gonna like, and actually let people, chill with the side of fiction that they want to chill with. That is all people need to do. But it's going to come down to whether or not people are going to accept that and whatever. And that's just how it is. First, before you could start trying to, blame individuals, you have to really look at the problem of what is going on with mentality for a lot of people, what they actually try to think. You got to change that mentality up first before you even be trying to go after a individual or things like that, which granted, at that point, the individual might end up changing along with the mentality. So there's also that. So again, it's not Max's fault that this shit has happened, right? It is the sense of thinking that, things like DOA and things like Senran Kagura and things that are lewd and ecchi of sexual nature needs to be shut down in some shape or form. It's not a single individual's fault. It is just how people have thought these days now, and it's just that thinking has to change. You have to change that thinking in order for things to kind of be okay. And again, if we had that, maybe something like a DOA 7 would be already a thing. It would be going on to DOA 8 or whatever the hell the projects that would be out there would be already been fine now, already out there. So yeah, again, this is just something that has been a problem for society just in general, not really liking things of sexual nature, or don't want to be open about it for whatever reason. Because for whatever reason, people are just scared of things that is just of sexual nature. It is what it is, but ultimately you do have to fight back against that sort of thing. Not by fighting people, but by fighting their mentality of those people. That's how you go about that. That's how you would be probably the best way to win this sort of battle, right? Realize fictional content is for everybody. Fictional content can do anything, and ultimately that is just what it should be. If you're going to use fictional content for anything, you can use it for whatever the hell you want to, and that's just how it is. So that's essentially what I really wanted to say for this one. A lot to be said, but ultimately I do think it's worth kind of spinning it all out and kind of saying, because again, there is so many different ideas that's out there that is just waiting to be developed and created, but the only reason why it will never really see a true light of day or get a free pass is solely because of how different companies, different people, different activist groups see these sort of things and absolutely shit on it for literally no reason. But we can do all the other opposite shit that just doesn't make a lot of sense, and then they can do it and then waste so much money, right? I promise you, if Sony didn't have the stance they did with a lot of these different ideas that come out of Japan, a lot of these lewd games or whatever, I promise you they really wouldn't have lost a lot of money like they have done in the past couple of years. I promise you they haven't. Hell, if you want a good example of that, Genshin, when it first came out, made more money than PlayStation the entire damn year. So to keep it very much a stack, once again, people know what they like. People are starved for content, and it's time to feed the actual streets. Like some hamburger helper, or some Chef Boyardee's, or some shit like that. But yeah, again, that's all I really want to say for this one. So hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Hit the bell notification on your way out. Also on socials. And if you'd like to donate to the channel, Kofi and Cash App is available as well. And until then, it's your boy Jay, signing off. Have a blessed day.